Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. It's great to see you at home, watching us here on Avy Awareness Night. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you got a drink in your hand. Today I'm going to talk about terrain use, and more specifically, how your terrain use can change under the same danger rating. Most people understand that as the danger rating goes up, your safe terrain options reduce. A closer look at the danger rating scale reveals that conditions can vary substantially at the same danger rating, and you can be presented with different conditions even though the danger rating is the same. So let's take a quick look at the danger rating scale that you're all familiar with, and just take a second to take a look at this. You're all familiar with low, moderate, considerable, high, and extreme. The next column is travel advice. The column after that is likelihood of avalanches. And then at the end we have avalanche size and distribution. Let's look at moderate and considerable quickly, two conditions we regularly see here in Colorado. Under moderate avalanche conditions, natural avalanches are unlikely, human-triggered avalanches are possible. And then if we look at the size and distribution column, we'll see something important. We can have small avalanches in specific areas, or we can have large avalanches in isolated areas. If we look at considerable, natural avalanches are possible, human-triggered avalanches are likely. And then if we look in the size and distribution category, things get a little bit interesting. We can have small avalanches in many areas, we can have large avalanches in specific areas, or we can even have very large avalanches in isolated areas. And that's what I want you guys to key in for my talk, is that last column of size and distribution. There's some significant variation for the same danger rating. So I'm going to show you some local terrain and give some examples of how your terrain use might change on a given piece of terrain with the same danger rating, but slightly different avalanche problems. So I'm going to give you two examples. One from Mount Emmons, everybody's favorite Red Lady Bowl, and I'm going to talk about regrouping areas at a moderate danger rating, but with two different problem sets. And we're going to discuss the difference between small and large avalanche potential on common regrouping areas, with the hope that at the end you understand that ideal regrouping areas minimize exposure while maximizing visibility of the terrain and allow for a quick rescue to the anticipated avalanche problem. And then the second one will be from the Pittsburgh terrain at the end of Slate River Valley. And here we're going to look at terrain selection at a considerable danger rating with two different avalanche problems. And notice how the reasonable terrain options are reduced because of the potential avalanche size and behavior changes, even though it's still considerable. Let's take a look at our first area, everybody's favorite, Red Lady Bowl, stares at us every day from town. For this first example, it's a moderate rated day. We have a wind slab problem with a small avalanche size. So it's moderate level 2 with a small size wind slab problem. Let's take a look at that. Let's make that big. So as you can see, I've drawn in some highlighted areas to represent small avalanches in Red Lady Bowl. I've put a couple red stars to indicate the common regrouping areas. And as you can see, with a small avalanche problem, those regrouping areas are probably reasonable. Avalanches are unlikely probably to reach those spots. They could, but they're probably reasonable places to stop and wait for your partners. Now, let's take a look at a slightly different scenario at the moderate danger level. So it's still moderate, but we have a persistent slab problem with an avalanche size of small to large. So it's still moderate, but the avalanche size is now large. Let's see what that looks like. So as you can see on this screen, I've drawn in some more highlighted areas to represent large avalanches. I've left those regrouping areas that people commonly use still there. And as you can see, a large D2 avalanche has the potential to overrun those common regrouping areas. Even though the danger level is the same, your treatment and regrouping of this terrain, if you chose to recreate in it, would be different. You probably aren't going to want to regroup in a place where your partner could trigger an avalanche on top of you. I use this example because it's a common piece of terrain that everybody's familiar with, but I'd like to be clear that I'm not suggesting you should regroup in any particular area. I'm just using this as an example to illustrate the concept that even though it's moderate in both circumstances, your regrouping area likely will be different. And your goal at the end is to have a regrouping area that minimizes your exposure to an avalanche, allows you to see the terrain, and at the same time allows you to rescue a partner in case of an avalanche. You probably wouldn't want to ski halfway to the parking lot and have your partner get buried on the upper bench. Climbing 1,000 vertical feet back up to your partner is not an effective way to perform a companion rescue. Same danger rating, but different terrain use. Let's go to the next example. This terrain is above Pittsburgh. You can see Schuylkill Peak and Schuylkill Subpeak on the horizon line. And for this example, the danger rating is considerable near and above tree line. There's a wind slab problem that's likely with small to large avalanches. And if we can do this screen big. So in blue, you'll see the common skin track and traverse track that people use in this area, with the green lines representing common descents. So on this day, it might be reasonable to ski this terrain, avoiding the size small to large wind slab problem. But if we take another example from the same terrain, considerable near and above tree line, but it's a deep persistent slab problem that is large to very large. So it's still considerable, but our avalanche size has changed. Let's take a look back at that picture now with some bigger avalanches to see what happens to the terrain options. So as you can see, some of those other terrain options that seemed reasonable with a small to large wind slab problem aren't maybe so reasonable anymore because the avalanche size has increased. The avalanche problem is a little less likely, but the avalanches are bigger. So even though it's still considerable, you might choose different terrain to have a safe, fun day. Several of these tracks potentially could be overrun by the expected avalanche size in this given day. So in the end, the avalanche danger rating is one piece of the equation. The same danger rating can encompass different size avalanches, different likelihoods, and a different distribution. Applying the danger rating and avalanche problem list with potential size to your route plan will allow you to control the amount of risk you are willing to assume. Small avalanche problems that are more likely require a different treatment than large to very large avalanches that are less likely, even though they might result in the same danger rating. The goal is to tailor each day's plan for the individual conditions that day, not just a certain danger rating. Thanks for watching tonight.